Let me ask, did you grow up close with your father and mother?
No.
And
No, my father left when I was a couple of months old, and I saw him only intermittently. He had a very troubled existence, a very successful man in many ways professionally, but a very troubled existence in his mind and his heart. And it's funny, so with my mother, I should really have brought a couch to the interview, but so with my mother, I have an odd affinity with my mother in that my mother is very creative. She's very intellectual. She helped me a lot with my novel writing and with my poetry. And her father was a writer, and her uncle was a writer, and intellectuals are all over the place on my mom's side of the family. And I always reminded my mother of her father, who she loved. And so she was kind of close in a way, but she just had this crazy temper that would just erupt in violence to the point where I literally would fear for my life.
yeah,
And I tried running away when I was like 4 years old. And I mean, I've said this before on my show. She like picked me up and beat me against this metal door to the point where I had to go limp, or I would have. I mean, I could have died. I could have, right? So I did appreciate my mother's enthusiasm for the intellectual work that I wanted to do, and she took it very seriously, and that helped me a lot. But it was again kind of like diffusing a bomb. Like I want to get the good stuff, but I
yeah,
don't want to trip over the rage, in her
right.
that, came out of probably her experiences growing up in the Second World War,
Amazing.
with horrible things happening to her in Germany from both the German government and the Russians who came in, who were horrible to children and little girls in particular. So I was happy in some ways with the fact that my mother took what I wanted to do seriously, which laid some foundation for what it is that I do, Jesse. But
Yes, yes.
man, she was terrifying.
Did
Oh,
you
man,
ever?
you
Is she
really
still
had to be
living?
careful. Sorry?
Is she still living?
She is still living.
And have you forgiven her for traumatizing you in that way?
I don't know if the longer the pause, the worse the answer, but I would say ah, that's a tough call. So I will say that I have come to peace with it in that I rarely think of it. I will use it like if you bring it up, I will talk about it. It's
Right.
not something where I'm scarred. It doesn't interfere with the pleasure of my day, and I can go for quite, days and days and days, or sometimes even weeks without really thinking about it at all. When you're a dad and you're raising a daughter, as I do with a stay-at-home dad, she's going to have questions, or there's going to be situations which
Right.
remind you. So, but for the most part, it's not in my mind, and it's not something that disturbs me in the present. But here's the challenge. I believe that forgiveness is something that needs to be earned. And while I have had in the past many conversations with my mother about what happened, and not screaming at her, not yelling at her, just, this is what happened. And, I think that it's important we talk about it. And, she just denied that it happened, or
Yeah.
would blame me, or would find some other escape route to not take any responsibility. And so I will not say that I have forgiven her, because there are other people in my life who've done me wrong, just as I've done wrong to people in my life. And I will ask for forgiveness, and I will make amends, and I will make reparations, and I will promise to do better, and really stick to that promise. And so for me, the people in my life who've earned my forgiveness, I will give it freely, just as I wish to be forgiven when I've made amends. The
Yes.
people who've not made amends, I come to terms with it. I release them in a sense from the requirement to earn it, but I can't use the same word as the people who honorably do earn forgiveness, if that makes sense.
So, if I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying no, I have not forgiven my mother because she has not earned it.
Right.
And how do you earn forgiveness?
Well, that's all the stuff I was taught as a Christian growing up. You have to admit your sin. You have to apologize genuinely. You have to work to make amends, if at all possible, and you have to really work hard to not repeat the behavior.
Is it possible that that was a wrong teaching?
Well, I suppose philosophically speaking, it's always possible. Yes.
Because forgiveness is not based on the other person admitting that they did wrong or coming to you and apologizing for it or anything. when you in the scriptures it says, if you have aught, meaning if you have anger against anyone, you go and forgive them, and I, meaning God, will forgive you. And when they don't have to admit anything, and when you forgive them, He will forgive you, and then return you back to your natural state of being before you were traumatized by that person. But so you can't earn it. He
Okay,
doesn't
but hang on,
even
hang on.
tell you.
Sorry to interrupt you, man. Let's just back up a sec here. Okay, so let's say my mom's in the room, right?
Right.
I just wet myself. Okay, so let's just say my mom's in the room, and in this, the way that you talk about it, I forgive her, though she hasn't done anything to earn it. In fact, she continues to deny and
Right.
make things difficult, right?
Of course.
So I forgive her, but then God forgives me. But what's God forgiving me for? I'm the victim.
That's a good question. That's a
Thank
home
you.
run question, man. That is an amazing question. What it is, unforgiveness is hatred, and hatred is judgment. And when you judge, you're playing God, and you're separated from the true God within you. And whomever you resent, you become like that person, and they control you. Let's say that your mother did those horrible things to you, and you became angry about it. In that very moment, you lost yourself and became like your mother, and that made you subject to her. And she still can control you whenever she wants to. And let's say you move back to Germany and leave mama in America. Whatever woman you get involved with is mama, because you're attracted to what you hate. And you'll find yourself, whenever you get in a relationship with different women, you become the boy and they become the mama. You won't be able to be honest with the woman. You won't, because you're afraid of hurting her feelings, or don't know how to deal with her overreaction because you were never told how to overcome your mother. And so she become your God, and every woman you get involved with is your God. You become subject to them. That's why when you don't forgive, you're controlled by that. But when you do forgive, you're separated from that, and now you're controlled by what is right within you. You are yourself, not subject to anyone else, whether they forgive or not or admit it. But they can't. There's nothing that human beings can do to earn your forgiveness. You need to have God forgive you. That's why He said, forgive them and I will forgive you. Meaning, stop playing God by judging people, but be honest with them.
Oh, so I would be forgiven for the sin of being angry at my mother, is that right?
Right, because she couldn't help herself. But as a kid, you didn't understand that. Because
Okay, but how do you know she couldn't help herself?
Because-
I mean, I'm a big free will guy, so I mean, if she doesn't have moral responsibility, then I was basically raised by an angry robot, so to speak.
You were, absolutely. Your mother didn't have a child just to destroy it. But because she became like her mother, she has the identity of her mother. She hates her mother. That spirit, I call it a spirit, is living in her and is driving her. And exactly what happened to her, she did it to you. And it goes from generation to generation unless you forgive so you can overcome that and become yourself again. And then you would not do that to your children. You could start a new generation.
That is powerfully spoken. And I'm going to be, again, kind of annoying and say, but, right? Because, I gotta
Right.
put up my dukes here for this stuff,
Absolutely.
right?
I'm glad. Absolutely.
Okay. I have not recreated my history with my child. I mean, I've never raised my voice at her. I've never hit her. I've never called her names, and we have a great relationship.
Are you married?
Yes.
I bet your wife is doing it.
My wife is wonderful, and nothing has been recreated to my knowledge from,
Now, would
from
you
what
think-
happened in the past. I'm sorry?
What happens when you're honest with your wife about her anger and that she need to back away from your kid, to be patient with your child? And have you spoken to her about those things?
I mean, I wouldn't, she doesn't have much of a temper, but I think like a lot of moms, she's taken the overprotective thing just a little bit too far. You kind of need the man to remind the
that's your
mom that the
mother.
kid is growing up and needs to, got to stretch out that umbilical and eventually cut it. So, she's pretty good with listening to that, and
Does she
take
accept?
a bit of repetition sometimes. Sorry?
Yeah, you're married to your mother. She may not be as dramatic the way your mother did you, But what your wife is doing to your daughter is still traumatizing her in the same manner.
I
And,
got to push back on that pretty hard, man.
yeah.
I don't think that's the case. My wife and my mother, you know, I could say that they're complete opposites, but then you got that problem of them meeting around the back, so to speak. But no, so for me, I think the way that I escaped the cycle was this is this is this is always my fear. You know, I don't mind getting personal here because I feel like I'm half in confessional anyway, so that's fine. But no, here's what it is for me, Jesse, that my great fear was what I call the great dial, right? So you know, like you get an amp on your guitar or whatever, right? There are all these different dials, right? You get a
Right.
bass, treble, and volume and all that.
Yeah.
And you can move them all independent, right? You can change your bass, treble, and all that. And then they're all tied together, right? So for me, there's one dial called free will for human beings. And if I can't just move it for myself without moving it for everyone else. Because that's my common humanity. I don't want to divide humanity into different groups, different species, different whatever, right? I want us all to be human because that's philosophy. That's, you know, it's got to be for everyone. It's not just for me, for blacks, for whites, it's for everyone. Right?
Right.
So for me, there's this dial. Now, if I move it for my mom, it moves for me. And if I move it for me, it moves for my mom or you or my dad or whoever, right? It moves for everyone. Now, if I say my mom, her free will goes down to 0. Now what happens in my heart, Jesse? I feel that move, man. I feel that free will goes down to 0 for me. And having a free will of 0 is just about the most terrifying thing that I can think of because then I'm run by history and I'm going to recreate everything that happened in the past.
Amazing.
I gotta have. I'll, you know, this stupid movie, like this goes up to 11, right? I want my free will to go up to 11, right? And so when I dial my free will up to 11, maximum responsibility plus, 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 it goes up for everyone. Everyone gets maximum free will. And that's how I change history. But then if you say, well, your mom had no control, then it's like you're taking this dial down, but you're taking it down for me, for you. And if we don't have any free will, then you and I are just ping pong balls bouncing around. It's not even really a conversation, if that
Right.
makes sense.
Do you believe that your mother wanted to treat you that way, her own son? You think that she wanted to do that?
Oh, well, you know, motivation is always pretty complex. I would say that empirically, she chose it to the alternative of not doing it. I will also say that she had the complete capacity to not do it.
And so
Because
if
when
she
we were
had
in
that,
public,
why would she do it to you, her son, if she had the capacity not to do it?
well, I know that she had the capacity to not do it because she never did it in public.
But
Right?
that
She
doesn't,
never did it with teachers around. She would never belt me in front of a cop. She would, like, wherever there were negative repercussions to her
right.
for abusing me, she found the magical ability to refrain from that abuse. Unfortunately, her love for me or my love for her was not enough of a motivation as your average random stranger who might cause her trouble if he saw her beating her son. I was not enough. And I know it's not personal to me. I was an object in a sense for her to vent her anger on. Like, you know, in the say that, you know, some guy kicks a chair over because he's angry. He doesn't hate the chair. He's just kind of acting out his immature anger. I was just like that chair. It wasn't personal to me. It would have been the same with any other kid for sure. But because I knew she had the capacity to not be abusive, that means to me she is responsible for being
Oh, I see what
abusive.
you're saying. Because she never did it in public,
Yeah.
only in private, that cause you to believe that she had the capacity to do it and not to do it.
It's sort of like, you know, if somebody's epileptic and they have a seizure,
Right.
they can't possibly not have that seizure.
Oh, I
You know,
get you.
that's not a choice. That's just like whatever, right? But if somebody, you know, punches you the moment the teacher leaves the room, then they had the capacity to not punch you. They're just waiting until they can get away with it.
That's amazing. Um, we don't have the time today, but I want to challenge you on the free will thing, because we don't. I'll just say we don't have a free will. I know you believe we do have a free will, but we don't have a free will. We are influenced either by evil or by good. It's depending on which God that we serve. And in the fallen state, we're influenced by evil. But when you overcome that fallen state, you're influenced by good. We don't have a free will. Let me
But you
have
got to choose. You want to encourage people to choose good over evil, right?
you don't choose it. It chooses you when you can admit that you are evil and that you are wrong, but you can't help yourself. Then you can overcome it. But I got to ask you this. Have you ever done anything that, quote unquote, was negative or wrong to others or to yourself? And you say, wow, I can't believe I did that. That's crazy. I would never do it again. And you go along for a week or two, a month, and you find yourself doing it again, and you can't believe you're doing it again. And you're like, whoa, I'm not going to do it. You say, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it while on your way to do it. Have you ever done that?
You mean like, say, checking Twitter in the middle of the night? I would say that there have been occasional times where I have relapsed into a not so ideal habit. Is that what you mean?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
And then it wasn't something that you wanted to do, right? But you would
I
find
would
yourself.
say that it was kind of rolling the dice. You know, if you wake up in the middle of the night and you know, if you're having a little bit of trouble getting back to sleep, Twitter is probably not the best way to soothe yourself off to la la land. So yeah, it's kind of rolling the dice in that
But
if you
how
just lie
about
there stewing, go ahead.
how about other things that to others, as you've been in the world for 50 years, I guess, and have there along the way have there been things you've done to others or even to yourself, and you say you would not do it again, and you knew it was wrong, at least you judge it as wrong, but you find yourself doing it again anyway. You can't believe that you're doing it again, other than Twitter.
Well, yeah, I would say not lately, but certainly when I was younger, there were negative habits that were hard to shake for sure.
And so was that your free will, or were you being influenced from within?
Well, I mean, that is sort of to say that there's a distinction between the two. I mean, I think free will is kind of like a muscle. Like you need to, you know, if you want to lift 1,000 pounds, you got to work out for a long time. You can just go and lift 1,000 pounds, your arms will come out, right? I mean, you just walk around like some knight in the Monty Python movie. So I think for me, when it came to breaking bad habits, it's kind of like you got to work up to it. Like you got to work up to lifting 1,000 pounds. So yeah, there's some repetition, but you kind of break free if you keep working at it. You can often break free from those negative habits. You know, like I mean, I dated a lot and irresponsibly when I was young. I chose women for shallow reasons. I didn't go for qualities of character, and I didn't evaluate women for long-term stability and so on. I just, you know, followed, well, I think we all know what I followed, right? And so that took a long time to lose that habit, to outgrow that habit. That took, you know, a fair amount of self-discipline, a fair amount of punching myself in the crotch with a icicle or something like that. So that took a while, but that's kind of breaking orbit from my entire history. It's like learning another language. It doesn't just happen overnight. You got to really work at it.
Is it possible that the reason you were doing those things is because you resented your mother for what had happened to you? And by resenting your mother, you became subject to women because you resented your mother. You resent all women. So you became subject to them. And so you went around having sex with them, trying to find something that was lost.
Well, I guess when it comes to our own existence, Jesse, you know, one of the most fundamental questions outside of religious questions, one of the most fundamental questions is, why did my father choose my mother? Right? That's a very fundamental question for us, right?
Yeah.
Because why we're here.
Yeah.
Why you're here, it's why we're all here. Why did my father choose my mother? And I think where the repetition was in the sort of fallen state paradigm was this, that my father did not choose my mother for her qualities of character, but because she was a very attractive woman. And she was. Great features and all that, slender and so on. And she's smart and she's a good conversationalist in many ways and all of that. But he didn't choose her for moral qualities of character. And so it was animal fertility markers, if that makes any sense. It was real mammal stuff. It wasn't anything to do with the higher self or virtue. And so I think we're kind of programmed to do what our fathers did because we're only around because our fathers were successful. and we want to reproduce, so we're programmed to do what our fathers did. And so I think for me, breaking out of the orbit of just choosing women based on looks or charisma or wit or things like that, which don't have any moral content,
Is it
that
possible
was very much, well, it worked for my dad, and that's why I'm here. So who am I to do different?
is it possible your father chose your mother because he was attracted to what he hated because he resented his mother?
Well, I don't know enough about him to say that for sure, but I'll certainly put that in the square round of possibility.